Continuing with the outline, in today's video I want to speak about the frustration of Jesus, the anger of Jesus. In many instances in the scriptures, we find that Jesus, at some point, as I mentioned in that chapter of demonic possession, he seems angry. He seems to be condescending, and I approach this topic in the book in a little bit in the discussion whether Jesus is human or is he God. What is he? What's going on? It seems that Jesus was a human just like everybody else, and he knew quite a lot about the ultimate reality of things, the ultimate nature of things, and he perhaps had some extrasensory perception to certain things. Either Jesus or the figure of Jesus or the person who was behind all the tales and all the mysticism behind the figure, he seemed to have been someone who had knowledge into the actual dynamics of the universe, and he seems to be very frustrated when people does not understand what he's talking about. Now, as I said, the main thing that I manage in the book is the idea that the dogmatic Christianity has this idea that Jesus is angry because people do not recognize him as the Son of God, or because people are sinners, and that when Jesus cries, when you sin, and things of that nature. And there is not a single clue in the scriptures of that. However, there is a lot of instances where he is angry when people don't understand what he's talking about. So I guess if I would have to make that question, which I make in the book for this video, so people understand a little bit better what I'm going to be talking about, is, does the frustration of Jesus come from people not worshipping or not recognizing him as the Son of God or as God itself, some sort of an elevated figure of worship? Or does his anger comes from people not understanding this truth, this final reality, this process of prayer, this system that he was always talking about and he was always alluding to? Before I move forward, I would like to remind you that if you want to join the growing discussion on consciousness and would like to be notified on the latest scientific discoveries and theories surrounding this topic and how they connect to ancient mythologies and philosophies, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, as I'll try to upload at least one video per week as I continue with the outline. The reason why I come to this question in this chapter is because I was speaking about this demonic possession in the previous video, which might be something much different than people usually think of. That was on the previous video, if you want to go ahead and watch that. But it comes to a part where Jesus seems to give people some of that condescending nature, some of that anger when this boy who was supposedly possessed by a demon cannot be healed. He cannot be healed by his disciples who had healed other people. The story goes that Jesus taught other people and his disciples to heal. So they should have been able to just heal the boy, but they couldn't. So Jesus somehow got frustrated about that. So the passage goes like this. A man in the crowd answered, "Teacher, I brought you my son who is possessed by a spirit that has robbed him of speech. Whenever it seizes him, it throws him to the ground. He foams at the mouth, gnashes his teeth, and becomes rigid. I asked your disciples to drive out the spirit, but they could not." "You unbelieving generation," Jesus replied, "how long shall I stay with you? How long shall I put up with you? Bring the boy to me." Mark 9:17, 19. It is very likely that in this situation, this boy was afflicted by something of the nature of epilepsy or some sort of seizure, some imbalances in the brain which caused a certain shock attacks that he was receiving. Of course, at the times of Jesus, this would have been perceived as the most evil of spirits. And as I've explained in the previous video, this idea of different influences around us in perhaps a world that we cannot really see with our eyes might be all around us, and they might not be like ghosts or demons or spirits, but more subtle afflictions, or more subtle even thought patterns or thought forms, as I reviewed with the whole concept of egregores. And so these might be part of what causes illness in a different way to understand it. If you want to know more about that, I spoke about it in the previous video. But in any case, the point of this video is to point out the way that Jesus addressed these people. And he said, "You unbelieving generation." Now, a lot of people think that this idea of belief is because they didn't believe in Jesus, but as we will see in the next passage, he's not speaking about people not believing that he is God or that he is the Son of God. He is angry because they didn't believe that they could heal the boy. He is angry about his disciples not being able to heal the boy. He says, "You unbelieving generation, how long shall I stay with you?" Now this is key. What does this mean? It means that he is not necessary for them to heal the boy. This is why he's asking, "How long shall I stay with you?" As if he is implying that he is not necessary to heal the boy. If they would just believe that they could heal the boy, then he would not have to stay with them. There's no other way to interpret this. How long shall I stay with you, you unbelieving generation? It's not about them believing in Jesus. It's about them believing in the fact that they can heal the boy or the child. How long shall I put up with you? He certainly seems very frustrated about this. The next passage goes like this. "It has often thrown him into fire or water to kill him. But if you can do anything, take pity on us and help us." "If you can," said Jesus, "everything is possible for one who believes." Immediately the boy's father exclaimed, "I do believe, help me overcome my unbelief." Mark 9:22-24. Now this passage brings us back to the question that I've asked before in this series of videos and in the book. Is this belief in Jesus as the Son of God or as a God figure, or is this belief in something else? What else exactly? So the father's voice says, "I do believe, help me overcome my unbelief." And Jesus asked, "If you can, everything is possible for one who believes." Is the whole concept about faith. What exactly is faith? Belief in what? That Jesus is God? No, believe that they can heal the boy, that the boy can be healed. This can be applied to anything. Anything you ask in the Father's name shall be added on to you, said Jesus at some point. I made a video about this. I'm going to link it somewhere around here. It's important to understand what exactly is he talking about. This is the same truth that he keeps repeating over and over and over. And people don't understand this. And this is why he says, "You unbelieving generation, you do not understand what I'm trying to explain to you." So, we also have to remember that Jesus always asked the victim, not victims, but the subjects of the healing, whether they think that he could heal them or not. He often would ask them, "Do you think that I can heal you? Do you think that I can do this?" And he always replied, "It is by your faith that you will be healed. It is by you understanding this process and believing that you can be healed," as I've explained as well. He always tells them not to tell anyone, because perhaps if they have doubts, something might go wrong, and they, it goes back to the whole idea of the holographic universe. Maybe we are all living in some sort of illusion, and if you don't believe it, then everything is reversed. This is the concept of Hamartia, how you can perceive a series of events just going into tragedy, and then they bring upon themselves their own tragedy. Perhaps this is what he was talking about. Now, no, doubting that something is going to happen, like a healing or something that would be added on to you. If you have any doubts, it's not going to happen. Now, people can misinterpret all of this, and as I often go, I start going into the fringe, and people are going to be thinking like, oh, what is you saying? No, this is not about this, especially the people who are very into the dogmatic Christianity. Like they would call me crazy. They would say, why are you talking about this? But we have to remember, it is right there in the scriptures. Even when Paul doubted that he could walk on water, he fell into the sea. He walked on water for a few seconds while he believed that he could. It was his doubt that made him sink. And that is not just like an analogy or a way to put a point across. Like many people who study the scriptures, they think that these are analogies and just things of fantasy for Jesus to make a point. No, in the scriptures they want you to understand that this actually happened. And when you go into the forbidden and the apocryphal scriptures, even stranger things happen, as one of the gospel sends with even stranger or more amazing things happen that will not be discussed in this book. They're speaking about paranormal phenomena. Now, I think I made a video about this. If I did, I'm gonna link it right here, about Paul walking on water. It's a bit of an old video, so it might not be completely as clear. As I've said, it is very hard for me to put my point across. As I often say, it's very important to not look at isolated episodes, but to get a grasp of something, we have to look into multiple occasions where the same thing happens and how the evidence overlaps each other. So if we look at some of the other instances where Jesus was angry or frustrated, we can better understand what is the root of his frustration. So there's a passage on Mark 3 where we have to remember that Jesus was trying to defeat the current dogma on his time. So whenever he was preaching, he was doing his thing, he suddenly became enlightened. I talked about that and how he went into this desert. I'm gonna approach it actually on the next video when I speak about fasting. But he suddenly became enlightened, and then he started preaching. And one of the main things that he wanted to do was to open the eyes of people to those silly traditions that the Hebrews had, that the Jewish fathers had, and he would be seen as a heretic because of this. This is why the Jews wanted to kill him, because he was being a heretic, because he wasn't taking any of the customs that they were trying to impose upon people. And he was saying, this does not matter. This is truly not what matters in life. There's something else. So there's one occasion in Mark 3 when there is this man who has some issue on his hand, but it was the Sabbath. As we know in the Jewish tradition, you're not supposed to do anything on Sabbath. You're not supposed to work. You're not supposed, and these are some of the rules that Moses came up with. We have to know that Moses, as I've spoken before, I think I have a video about this. I will link it if I find it. Moses was someone who perhaps had one of these paranormal encounters, one of these strange phenomena happened to him, and then he had some sort of power out of nowhere. But then he started to put some of his ideas into the rules that were to become the Jewish religion. And now I've spoken about this. It is very likely that he had some sort of real contact with higher intelligences, and then he added out of his own ideas, and a mixture began. So this is why when we look at the Old Testament, at this ancient God, he seems like an angry Jewish man. So it is very likely that some of his own stuff was put in there, and just silly rules like the ones that we have today in Christianity. So Jesus confronted them, and he said to this man, come, stand up. And then he healed them on a Sabbath. And all the Jewish people were like, what are you doing? Why are you doing this? And the passage goes, he looked around at them in anger and deeply distressed at their stubborn hearts. So he was angry at this. He was deeply angry about these people thinking that you shouldn't heal, you shouldn't do good to others, you shouldn't do anything productive just because of this silly rule. He said to the man, stretch out your hand. He stretched it out, and his hand was completely restored. Then the Pharisees went out and began to plot with the Herodians how they might kill Jesus. Before that, Jesus asked them, which is lawful on the Sabbath, to do good or to do evil, to save life or to kill? But they remained silent. He was angry at these silly rules that they were trying to put forward, and he was trying to show them something larger than all their dogma. So it is quite interesting, and I find it a bit ironic that today we have a lot of dogma related to Christianity, when Jesus on his time was trying to defeat the dogma and these silly rules imposed by the Jewish patriarchal society. There were other instances where the anger of Jesus comes from a more abstract root. On John 11:33, the whole story about Lazarus and how he brought him back from the dead. So on John 11:33 goes like this: when Jesus saw her weeping and saw the other people wailing with her, a deep anger welled up within him, and he was deeply troubled. So he was angry at death itself, at the fact that this man had died, and it created suffering in other people. Now, this idea of suffering being the enemy of the ascetic is quite common. This was also the reason why the Buddha became the Buddha, because he wanted to understand suffering. It's the same thing with Jesus. Jesus was angered at this suffering that death itself creates. It's this imbalance of life, of when people bring bad things into their lives, and they become paralyzed, or they are possessed by demons. He gets angry and he calls them sinners. You are a sinner. Why did you bring this upon you? So in this instance, he was just angry at death itself, and he said, I'm gonna approach this, and when I start speaking about the resurrection of Jesus, he simply brought him back to life. He called because of his father, and he simply said, Lazarus, come out. And after 4 days that supposedly Lazarus had been dead, he came out of the tomb. So that's something interesting. It ties to the paranormal phenomena that I'll be speaking, related to the resurrection. The resurrection is a huge topic in the outline that I go fully into, and it's not what people think. It goes even deeper. There might have not been a real resurrection, like a physical resurrection, but I'll go into it further along the outline. Of course, there's also the story where Jesus actually created a whip out of rope and chased merchants in the temple, trying to get them away from the temple, and he was angry. He called them thieves and robbers. So the whole story goes that it was in the temple, there was some sort of celebration, and he had the idea of the temple was for prayer, a sacred temple. And then during the celebration, I think it was Passover celebration, all the merchants were over there doing their cheating and doing their stuff. They were selling doves for sacrifice and all these things that they had in their society. And he actually called them thieves. He said, "Get these things out of here. Stop turning my father's house into a marketplace. My temple will be a house of prayer, but you have turned it into a den of thieves." He was angry at them. He chased them with a makeup whip of some nature. He was angry about this. You have to understand that this was a man who denied familiar bonds, saying that we're all brothers, we're all sisters, we're all the same, and I am in you and you're in me. He's speaking about this oneness, this unity. So a lot of people grab these examples, and some of the others where they call these merchants. They think that merchants are sinners and so on and so forth, to claim that Jesus was a socialist or something of that nature. It goes deeper beyond that. We have to remember that all of these rule sets that come from divine influence they seem to be ways to have better societies. You shall not kill, you shall not desire the wife of your neighbor, and things of that nature. These all seem to be rules for coexisting in society. So yes, he was angry when he saw all these merchants trying to trick people into turning the focus of prayer, of the sacredness of the system that he was espousing, into all of these merchants and to all of this trading that was going on in the temple. It seems to be that he saw the society at his time as somewhat reduced to what it could have actually been. He didn't like the way people treated each other. That was his message, to do what you would want to be done unto you. He wanted them to know the truth. He wanted them to be able to overcome their unbelief, to understand that they were more. Because he said, all I do, you will do and more. If you believe in what I'm telling you, if you believe about the truth that I'm espousing. Now, I went into this passage in the previous videos explaining how perhaps consciousness can create consciousness. And the whole idea about this duality of worlds, the world of the flesh and the world of spirit. Now, on one of the apocryphal, this Gospel of Thomas, saying 29, it goes like this. Jesus said, if the flesh came into existence because of the spirit, it is a marvel. But if the spirit came into existence because of the body, it is a marvel of marvels. But as for me, I wonder at this, how this great wealth made its home in this poverty. Now, I've spoken about the flesh of the spirit and how perhaps everything comes from the invisibilities and the whole idea of consciousness and thought forms which create matter. The whole duality between energy and matter. It might be that consciousness could be what creates matter itself. But what I want to focus on this video is the latter part that I said I was going to explain in the next video. It is, I wonder at this, how this great wealth made its home in this poverty. He is referring that the wealth of the spirit, the wealth of the non-physical, made its home into the flesh, into this poverty. So there's even in the Gnostic Christianity, this whole rejection of the body, the rejection of the flesh, the rejection of the current society into something more divine, into some sort of elevation, of ascension, if you may. And there is a dose of that in the scriptures. He wanted to create something else, something higher than the current social structures and social practices that were going on at his time. Now, as a side note, I want to mention that it is not uncommon for thinkers, philosophers, people who have this depth about the understanding of the laws of life, the laws of nature, have this disgust against their current societies, and they are very vocal in showing this disgust. And now, while I'm thinking about this, the way that Jesus was angry at the society of his time, you have to think about Friedrich Nietzsche. And I might expand on this in a future video, because when you think about Friedrich Nietzsche and some of his theories, because he had some strange theories, but he had this idea of the Ubermensch, this Uberman who overcomes the current rules of society and becomes something else. He puts a bigger burden upon himself. If you think about it, the Ubermensch of Friedrich Nietzsche is some sort of Christ figure. And when Friedrich Nietzsche said God has died, what is gonna replace God? Because when God died, when the whole the early Christian church had a bit of an influence in keeping the social rules and the morality of people, it was a little bit of good with a lot of bad. In my opinion, it wouldn't have been justified. But it sort of ties into this. He said, God has died. What will replace God? And his idea, what will replace God would be this Christ figure that he developed. And he said that when God died, society is going to turn into chaos. Society is going to turn into total low ideas. Some people are gonna get into vices. Some people, and the societal structure is gonna crumble even more than it was already crumbling at his time. So he called this broken society the boggled botch, and he was very vocal against this current format of society, and he was imposing this idea of the Ubermensch, of this Christ figure. I think what happened in the times of Jesus was very similar. Jesus understood some of these natural laws, some of these real dynamics of even the universe itself, not only society. So when he was preaching, when he was doing all these things, he wanted something else. He wanted something higher, and he despised the idea of a low society with a low priority, just focusing on money, focusing on being merchants, focusing on hurting each other instead of creating something larger. It's just a bit of a side note, because it is not uncommon for philosophers or thinkers to be against their current format of society. It might be something that I will expand in a further video, but I just wanted to make this note here. Most people think that the scene at the temple where he chased the merchants with his makeup whip is one of the better examples when Jesus got angry. But I think there's a better example of the anger and this frustration of Jesus. There is a scene in the scriptures where, as we know, Jesus was, at the beginning, he was healing people. He was, quote unquote, casting out demons, as I've spoken about. And the Jewish people didn't like this for some reason. They didn't like the fact that somebody had so much power, and he was espousing these ideas that we could all do this. He taught the disciples how to heal. He taught them how to do the things that he did. He told them that we're all equal. He told them that there was a process whereas he, if they believed, everything would be added on to them. He told them that they could be healed by their own faith. He told them that everything he did and more they would do. He was espousing this truth about a system, about the final reality. He told them that these silly rules from their previous religion did not matter at all. So at some point, when he was healing, he was casting out demons. One of the fathers, the Jewish, one of the person of their dogma, they said to him, "You are acting in the name of Beelzebub. You're acting in the name of the prince of demons." And then he replied with a very logical answer. He said all these things in the passage that go like a house divided will fall, and so on and so forth. Basically what he said was, if I am working for the devil, then why are we fighting the devil if I'm doing good? You're just putting all these accusations because you don't understand what I'm talking about. He told them that. And he got angry. He got really angry. And the text in the scriptures goes, he knew his thoughts, like if he just knew their thoughts, because they were murmuring amongst themselves, and he understood what they were saying. He felt it. And that goes on to say, if you read the whole, I believe it's Matthew 23, where the whole thing goes on. This is a long, I'm not going to read the whole passage, but he basically called them and he judged them. He said, woe to you. He called them hypocrites. He called them blind guys. He called them fools. He said, you snakes, you brood of vipers. All this hatred that is within you is coming out of your mouths. And a very important thing is in this passage, and I made a whole video about this, because that's where he spoke about the judgment. And he said, every idle word you speak will be used against you in judgment day. Every single word you utter will be there on judgment day. And now this seems like something very tough, and when you read the scriptures, you can tell that whoever wrote this wanted to portray this anger from Jesus to these men who were accusing him and who were trying to impose all these rules on people. And even though it seemed like something very harsh to call them that every other word they use will be used against them in this quote-unquote judgment day, what I speak about in the video that I made about this is that this goes hand in hand with the modern evidence that we have on near-death experiences. There is not such judgment as we understand it. As we understand it in the dogmatic Christianity, there's not this judgment where a silly little thing you did is gonna land you into hell and into the lakes of fire. As I've spoken, many people sort of have these negative experiences where they feel all this anguish and all this pain, some sort of an emotional pain, and sometimes they're very vivid hallucinations when they are in these altered states of consciousness. But we also have what happens usually during the quote-unquote life reviewing near-death experiences, where people literally relive all these scenes from their lives where they have inflicted pain upon others, and they feel this pain as the other person. They feel what the others felt, and they see everything that happened. So we are speaking about something further away into the fringe. We're speaking that perhaps we are in an illusion. We are in a holographic world where when we go into our quote unquote judgment days, we literally can relive any scene in time in our lives. And it all has a purpose. Now, I've spoken about what this could entail, what this purpose could be. Because if there is a process and there is a pattern that keeps repeating on and on and on in all near-death experiences, and we find it in ancient scripture where Jesus said, every idle word you speak for, you'll be accountable on judgment day. Then there's a process, and if there's a process, there's an end product, and there's a purpose for it. I'll link the videos somewhere along the screen. Also, all of the videos that I have been talking about, they will be linked underneath this video on the description section, in case all the relevant to this video, they will be there. But yeah, he was angry at them, and he wanted them to understand this. Sometimes when people get angry, and it happens a lot in modernity, in people's lives, where they are angry at something, and they think like, oh, I only wish that this person could understand my anger and my feelings and my pain that they caused me. And this is what we see near their experiences, that every single, even the little things, your interaction with the server, your interaction with someone in a lower position in the hierarchy status of our current society, you feel what they felt, and it all has a purpose. And then we have all these rules from these divine interventions, these divine episodes, where the rules are about setting our society straight and coming up with a better society. So we have a guideline that tells us what this whole thing might be. These forces that create the near-death experiences, that create the illusions, that create these divine connections, these divine episodes, are leading us into a better way to live our lives, a better way to structure our society, so we can see some sort of a quote-unquote divine plan in action. But that is a topic for another video, and I've already started speaking about. This is my thesis at the end of the outline. There might be something else going on behind this whole divinity, these divine interventions. But in any case, what I was speaking about was this anger of Jesus, and he speaks about this hatred within people, and that's what makes him angry. The words they use, he calls them a brood of vipers. And he tells them every single word, every idle word you speak will be accounted. So there's this notion, this idea that he is extremely angry at the way they are treating him, at the way they are, the way they are inside, all the hatred that is within them. So again, if we go into the things that he tried to teach, we go into this scene and these thought patterns. Whatever as above, so below. Whatever you ask for the Father, it will be given to you. And there's another, in the process of prayer that I spoke about and that I reviewed, he says something along the lines: if you are angry at your brother, go and forgive him. Go and talk and make peace with him before you pray, because all this anger will be with you, and you have to get rid of all this anger. There's another passage where it goes like, never go to bed angry, or something of that nature. Like, resolve these feelings, resolve all of this, and then pray, then go do all these things. So it seems that he gets angry at when things don't go his way, when the fig tree does not produce fruit, when he gets angry at death itself. He gets angry when people are quote-unquote sinners, and they bring up these negative effects into their bodies. They bring up this sickness, this illness. He gets angry at these things. He gets angry mainly when people don't believe or don't understand what he is talking about. Now, I've spoken about quite a few episodes of his anger. There's not a single one where he gets angry at people for not calling him God, or for not worshipping him, or even God himself. There's not a single one of those episodes that people mostly believe that this is what it's all about, that is clearly stated in the dogmatic narrative. But what's the purpose of his anger? Why get angry in the first place? Doesn't all the other ascetic paths tell us to not be angry, to let people do whatever they want? Isn't that the current motto for our society? Let everyone do whatever they want, as long as it doesn't hurt you. If they're hurting themselves, well, whatever. Jesus gets angry at people hurting themselves. Jesus gets angry at sinners. He gets angry at people not understanding what he is trying to espouse. Why is this? As I mentioned, there seems to be a process of growth, a process of letting people understand how to better manage their lives, a process that lets us know how much pain we have inflicted in other people. We can see this in altered state of consciousness. It is explained, it is understood after people come from these experiences that we are all one, that we are all connected somehow. So it is very likely that in the anger of Jesus, there lies a love for humanity, a love for a purpose that people barely understand. And perhaps if there is such a purpose, a quote-unquote divine plan, if you may, and if Jesus was some sort of messenger, some sort of emissary of this plan, failure to understand it would bring about his anger and frustration. If you're on the path of finding the truth about reality and our purpose as humans on Earth, the information that I have to share concerns you. After a lifetime of research in philosophies ranging from Buddhism to the occult, I've encountered themes and patterns along some baffling information that is beginning to be seriously studied by science. A Rational Divine Outline, The Ghost of Jesus, is the first iteration of this project, where I analyze the message of Jesus without dogmatism, fanaticism, or religious bias. You can find my work available on Amazon on the link below. If you find this work valuable, consider subscribing, sharing, and following me on social media, as it'll help others in the same path to find this information. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.